So you're thinking of buying or selling a condo, but you don't know how to evaluate the value of that condo. Well, there are 10 things you must consider to come to an accurate pricing for that condo. Number one, looking at comparables within that specific building. So let's say, for example, you are at Peter and Adelaide. Now in Peter and Adelaide, and let's say you're looking at one of the buildings on Peter Street. Well, all those buildings have their own market. So let's say you are buying or selling a condo in, let's say, 87 Peter. Well, you can look at the comps in or recent sales in buildings like 101 Peter, 125 Peter, 115 or 125 Blue Jays Way, because every building has its own market. Every building is built by a specific builder. Yes, there are buildings that are, we consider them sister buildings or dual towers. For example, in Toronto, buildings like 199 Richmond, 30 Nelson, both those buildings are comparable to each other. 21 Nelson, 126 Simcoe, those are comparable. But you have to look at comps within that building. A lot of times I hear agents, oh yes, you know what, we had a sale in this building which is across the street. Well, it could be a completely different offer, right? Let's say, for example, you are on Charlotte Street. There's 8 Charlotte, there's 11 Charlotte, and next to it there's 25 Oxley. All those 3 buildings are so different. So when you are evaluating the valuation of your condo, you have to specifically look at only that building or a comparable building. As I said, like 199 Richmond and 30 Nelson, both those buildings are comparable to each other. 88 Harbor, 100 Harbor, comparable to each other. Number 2, configuration. So you must understand that dollar per square foot for condos depends on the size and the configuration. Meaning that, let's say a one bedroom condo in that building is selling at $1,100 a square foot. Well, that number is not going to be the same for a 2-bedroom, 2-bath. The larger the square footage, the smaller the dollar per square foot pricing. The smaller the condo, the higher the dollar per square foot pricing. So if you're comparing 1-bed condo's value, you have to compare it to similar sizes in that building. Number 3, time period. Now last year and the year before was an anomaly where there was hardly any sales in the market. But generally, you want to look at sales within the last 3 to 4 months. Now, you might be pricing your condo at a time where there's been something that has happened erratic in the market. So for example, in 2017, we had the foreign buyers tax. That immediately impacted the value of condos. COVID completely impacted the value of condos. If the interest rates start going up, impacts the value of a condo. But if the market is stable, if the pricing is based on what's just, the market is not having any erratic events, then I would say look at comps that are only 30 to about 120 days. If you don't find comps, then you have to adjust. You have to know what was our market doing if you're looking at a comparable sale, let's say a year ago or 6 months ago or 3 years ago. Number 4, future development. So let's say you have a gorgeous building, you got a south view, and now there's a building coming in front of it, or the construction is now at that point where the view of that condo is completely decimated. So that's going to impact your value. However, also, if you have a condo where there's some future development and that's going to positively impact your value, then you got to keep that in consideration as well. Let's say, for example, let's look at Front and Spadina. I'm looking at a building like Fly Condos. Well, it has the well across from it. So, people who are buying at the well have bought at a very, very high dollar per square foot compared to people who bought at the Fly. Obviously, the buildings are different. However, anybody who's living at Fly can just cross the street and enjoy all the amenities the well has to offer. So at times, you have to look at future development. Sometimes it positively impacts the value of your condo, sometimes negatively. You need to know what are those constraints of the development that are affecting the value of your condo. Number 5, level. So let's say I'm comparing a condo that is sold on the 20th floor, exact same floor plan as mine. However, my condo is on the 10th floor. Generally, the rule of thumb is for most condos in the downtown core that every floor you go up, the value goes up $1,000. Some buildings like 300 Front, once you're above the 15th floor, the floor height changes. So you go from 8 to 9 foot ceilings. That has an impact on value. So generally, give $1,000 per floor for the level. If you are 10 floors higher than a condo that is recently sold, you have to adjust your value by $10,000. or if you're 10 floors lower than a comparable sale, you have to adjust your price by taking away $10,000. Number 6, parking spots. So parking spots generally in Toronto are worth between $50,000 to $55,000. In newer buildings and pre-construction condos, those parking spots are now $75,000, $100,000. Some new buildings don't even allow you to buy a parking spot if you're a one-bedroom condo. But generally, you're looking at about $50,000 to $55,000 for a parking spot. Now, not every building has a positive impact of having a parking spot. Let me explain. Some buildings, let's say for example, the Conservatory Group built 25 Lower Simcoe and 19 Grand Trunk. Those buildings have a very, very low maintenance fee on the parking spot. See, maintenance fees play a big impact on the value of your condo. Some big buildings, let's say Maple Leaf Square, okay, so their maintenance fee on a parking spot is touching over $100, right? So having a parking spot generally will positively impact you, but sometimes certain buildings you don't want to buy a parking spot. Maintenance fees. Now, maintenance fees play a big effect on the value of your condo, especially when interest rates are coming down. Let me explain. So let's say I have a condo that is across the street, okay, in a different building, but very similar in build quality, timing of building, design, but they have a problem with their reserve fund, meaning that they don't have enough funds. Let's say there is a major repair coming up. There are no funds in that reserve fund in the condo to pay for that repair, meaning that when that repair comes up, all the owners in that building are going to get what's called a special assessment. Meaning, let's say there's $1 million repair coming up, and there's 300 condos. Well, most likely everybody's going to get a $3,000 to $4,000 special assessment. So maintenance fees, which is the fear for most people who are not familiar with condos and are buying condos, or what's going to happen to the maintenance fees. Well, maintenance fees also, and the health of the reserve fund, the lawsuits against that building, they affect the value of a building as well. Balconies. Now, balconies are, especially after COVID, have a very, very special value for people living in Toronto. Now, a lot of the newer buildings are not building balconies. For example, Forma does not have balconies. So, anybody who's living at Theatre Park, older building, but a great building again. Anybody who's got a south view at Theatre Park has amazing value. Balconies also are an extra living space, especially in smaller condos. So, there are certain builders who've done a great job when it comes to balconies, and Brad Lamb is one such builder. You look at a building like 11 Charlotte, you can have a 452 square foot condo with a massive balcony, right? So when you're entertaining at home or just in your daily life during the summer months, balcony becomes a very important living space in a condo. So balconies have a lot of value. Now, there are certain buildings that have some massive terraces. One of our clients recently bought a condo in the Beaches and it had a massive terrace, about 300 square foot terrace. Now that has value. So generally balconies have about a $30,000 to $35,000 value. So let's say, for example, you're comparing your condo that does not have a balcony within the same building, and the comparable sale had a balcony. Well, it's about $30,000 to $35,000 adjustment. Let's say within that same building, you have a massive terrace. Let's say a 200 square foot terrace, which is rare, but there are condos that have it. Again, that takes away the value of a condo from a comparable. Exposure. Now, exposure is something that has a lot of subjective value. Some people just don't care, right? Some people will buy a condo. Oh, I want to buy a condo with a beautiful view. So recently, one of our clients bought a condo at 59 Annie Craig in Mimico, and it had a south view, a permanent view. There's actually no room to build another condo. So that view has massive value, right? Again, some buildings, let's say even the older buildings, let's say at 10 Yonge, they have great views. So views are subjective. Now, there are certain buildings, let's say, for example, at 70 Temperance. On the lower floors, you're looking smack into the brick wall. Well, some people are okay with it, some are not. right? So exposure or your views also have value, but it's subjective. If you're buying a condo that you are buying it for a view, you have to understand that not everybody may appreciate the value you're willing to pay. So, it's almost like upgrades in a home, right? You drop 100 grand into a kitchen, well, maybe some buyer would appreciate it, some may not, right? But generally, going forward, especially in the downtown core, views will have more value because, it's pretty much a concrete jungle now. Can you imagine what's going to happen the next 25, 30 years? So views do have value. It just depends. It's subjective, so it depends on you. Now, this is a bit of a touchy one, which is occupancy of a condo. So yes, who lives in a condo should not change the value of a condo, but it does. So let's say, for example, you are about to sell a condo that is tenanted. Well, you need to understand one thing, that if your building is older than 2018, it has rent control. So a lot of times investors would not want to buy a condo that has a tenant in it, right? Condos that are owner occupied or are vacant generally have more value when it comes to investors because they can get a fresh, brand new lease. They do not have to assume somebody's tenant, especially if the tenant is paying, a pretty low rent that they might have secured during COVID. They've been there for 3-4 years. That would scare away an investor. So, you know what, this tenant's been here 4 years. There's no reason they're leaving. And when it comes to buying condos with tenants in them, you always have to assume a tenant unless you are buying it for personal use or for a family member or a caregiver of your family member. A lot of people try to pull stunts with, tenants in there and say, oh yeah, we're buying it for personal use. The property closes and within a month, you'll see that listing on MLS for lease. Can't do that. The fines are massive, and yes, those fines are enforceable. So who's occupying your condo also has value. And when you're buying a condo, so let's say you're an investor and you're buying a condo, I would always tell you not to buy a condo that has a tenant unless that building does not have rent control. So let's say you have issues with that tenant or that tenant is not paying market rent. You can close that property. Upon closing, give that tenant 90 days notice that we'll be increasing your rent if that building does not have rent control. So occupancy when it comes to condos will have value for investors. And again, if you're an investor, or even if you're a first-time buyer or a move-up buyer, you're buying a condo that is vacant. Well, that has value to you because somebody's carrying that without any revenue coming in. So, you can generally get a better deal if you can provide a quick closing. So these are variables you must keep in mind when you're buying or selling a Toronto condo to evaluate the pricing of that condo. But I must say one thing, when you are working with somebody or when you're working with a realtor who's going to help you decide the value of your condo, it's very important that you work with someone who knows the downtown market. The Toronto condo market is one of the most complex markets simply because most agents do not know every building. You need to work with someone who knows pretty much every building in your area, right? And it's possible, right? It takes time, but realtors who specialize in the downtown core, they know those buildings. So if you got great value out of this condo, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, hit that bell icon. And if you have any questions regarding Toronto condos, just send us a message or book a call with us at booksamir.com. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.